But,
What's that?
all right, here we go. How you doing, folks? Ron Raymond here from the Raymond Report, along with Ross Benjamin of rbwins.com. And fortunately, Ross, we kicked out Rusty out of the office today, so I don't think we'll have any underdog issues. But how you doing, Ross?
I'm doing okay. A little bit of technical difficulties to start today with my audio. Hopefully it's straightened out. If it's not, I apologize to the listeners.
No, you sound loud and proud there, Ross. You're sounding nice and clear. So, Ross, hey, we got some really good football games to talk about this weekend. We got UCLA, Chip Kelly going back to Oregon for the second time. Iowa taking on Penn State. Penn State looking for that first win. Cincinnati, a team you've been big on for a few weeks, taking on Central Florida. Indiana at Ohio State. Liberty, surprising Liberty taking on NC State. We're going to talk about Wisconsin taking on Northwestern. That should be an interesting matchup. And then we're going to talk about the Bedlam matchup in Oklahoma this year, where Oklahoma State going to take on the Sooners, and that'll be a match that we're going to talk about here very shortly. Again, folks, if you're watching on YouTube or any of our platforms that you can hear us on, we're on Spotify, YouTube, and if you are on YouTube and you have a question you want to ask us, feel free to mention in the chat, and we'll try to get it as quick as possible. All right, Ross, before we get going, don't forget, where can people get your selections if they want your college football picks or your NFL picks this weekend?
You can get them at atsstats.com, which is Ron's site. You can now get them daily packages as well as subscription plans. You could also get them at my website, rbwins.com. If you need me to tailor a package specifically for your needs and you don't think it's included in what you're looking for, just give me a call, 781-571-0299, 781-571-0299, and I employ no salespeople. You'll talk to me directly and me only. So again, Ron, what do you got going on?
Yeah, I'll 17-8, my last 25 releases at the website. Nice. I will have NFL selections. NFL is more my bag when it comes to the football scene and the CFL, but we all know there's no CFL this year. And so I'll have my NFL college football selections. In fact, I got 2 college football picks up right now. It's 2 totals, and I will be adding 2 to 3 more to that package. And folks, you can get those plays right now by going to our website at atsstats.com. All right, Ross, I'm going to do a screen share right now. We're going to talk about a game that we know that a lot of people will be watching this weekend. Now, let me see if I got the right screen here. Do you see UCLA, Oregon?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so Ross, Chip Kelly going back to Oregon, and hopefully it'll be a better performance than he did in 2018 when he went and faced the Ducks. Now, looking into this game, Oregon, 13.5-point home favorite. The over-under set at 66.5. ATS forecast, the computer pick, Ross, going to go with the Ducks here, 45.6 to 21.8. The over-under to land on 67.4. Now, digging into a bit of the game here, Ross, Oregon, in the last 3 years at home, 17-0 straight up as a home favorite. And you know what? UCLA going to have their hands full. Oregon's, Eugene is, there's no fans right now, but always been a tough place for the road team to get a win. What are your initial thoughts on this game this weekend?
Well, the one thing that sticks out to me, and it's probably going to be overlooked by many, this is a 10 a.m. local time start, which is unusual in the Pac-12 prior to this year. Having said that, UCLA played last Sunday as part of a schedule scrambling because of the COVID issues. They were originally, I believe, scheduled to play Utah, and they played Cal at home last Sunday, and that was a 9 a.m. Eastern time start, or 9 a.m. local time start, I should say, which is highly unusual again. And UCLA came up big in that game, 34-10. So, you look at Oregon, they have not started a game this early, and I'm going to say program history. I'm going to go out on a limb. So it's always good to get a game under your belt with that early start time. So I'm just wondering if Oregon gets off to a slow start and UCLA gets off to a fast start in this game. I guess that's what my point is, Ron, in accordance with that time change.
And you know what? That's they're going back to their Pop Warner days when you're playing 10 a.m. and half the field and cones and so this will be a game changer for a lot of these players or a time changer for them when they get on the end. Their whole daily routine is out of whack on game day, right?
Yeah.
You're getting up earlier, your pregame
And
meals.
no fans in the stands either, Ron. You know what I mean? 10 a.m. starts bad enough, and then there's no people there to give you some energy. So I think it would favor UCLA because they already played an early start last week. You know what I'm trying to say? So at least early on, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see UCLA have a very fast start in this game, and Oregon take a while to get their sea legs going.
Well, we all know Chip Kelly and his offense. When he had at Oregon, there was a shotgun, what do you call it? An air raid type offense, but more RPO based. The one thing I was looking at the quarterback stats for UCLA, he's only got a completion percentage of like 51%. So, that's one thing that worries me a bit. But the thing with Chip Kelly's teams, they play fast. And there are a lot of run-oriented type teams like RPOs, right? So I don't know if that will have any effect this weekend. But looking at the game, this matchup here on Saturday, in UCLA's last 10 visits to Oregon, to Eugene, they're only 3-7 straight up, 4-6 against the spread, 4-3-3 to the over. And in the last 10 overall matchups between the Bruins and the Ducks, Oregon 8-2 straight up, 6-4 against the number, 3-6-1. And as I said, Eugene's a tough place to win. As I alluded to, that 17-0 the last 3 years as a home favorite. So they're going to have their work cut up for them this weekend. And just taking a look at the last few matchups here, Oregon last year, actually the last time they met was 2018 that I see, 42-21. That's the game we talked about at the top of the show where I guess Chip Kelly was the head coach in 2018. And, it wasn't a good welcoming party. But prior to that, look at that, with 31-14, 42-30. So I'm just trying to see when was the last time UCLA. I'd have to go back into the database to see when was last time they beat. Well, obviously, what I said was 3-7 the last 10. So must be a minimum of 7 years ago. Looking at some of the numbers in this game, I'd like to see if there's anything that really stands out. UCLA, the last 3 years coming off a home win as an underdog, 2-9 against the spread in their next game. And Oregon at home on a 2-game win streak, the last three, right on cue, 18-8 against the number. So when they're coming off a 2-game win streak. Looking at the offense, 39 points for, giving up 21.5 against. And UCLA, Chip Kelly, though, the one thing Chip Kelly can do, he can put points on the board, right?
Yeah. Both of these teams been explosive offensively. UCLA's 1-1, Ron, but their loss was 48-42 at Colorado. And that Colorado team now looks better than expected. Oregon's averaging 39 points, like you said, and 538.5 yards of total offense per game. UCLA, like Ron just touched upon, 38 points per game and 459 yards of total offense per game. So we may be looking at a pretty entertaining affair here if you like offensive football, Ron.
And with that 10 a.m. start, do you think that'll have any effect on the total?
Yeah, I mean, again, it would scare me to go over, even though we're looking at prolific offenses here thus far, just because I'm a little bit worried about Oregon and the start they get off to. Look how Cal reacted last week. Cal, that was their season opener last week, Cal. A 9 a.m. local time start, and a team that was favored in that game, and Cal -3.5. They didn't adapt well to that early time start. After UCLA gave up 48 points the week before, they held Cal to 10. Now, I'm not implying it's going to happen again, but I'd be surprised if Oregon got off to a fast start in this game. I really would, and that would probably prevent me from even contemplating taking the over, Ron. And I certainly wouldn't want to take the under in this game with how these teams are scoring and moving the ball up and down the field based on their first two games.
Yeah, and I think that game against Cal was a Sunday game, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
it was a Sunday morning game. Yep, that's
Yeah.
correct.
When the total is 66.5, Ross, for the home or road team the last 3 years, just a little tidbit here, 12, 15, and 0. So pretty much balance here when it comes to these high totals, right? I find it's one of the hardest things to handicap when you get these high totals, especially
Yep.
in the MAC, like watching those games last night in the MAC. The one thing that stood out to me last night watching the Ball State and watching, was it Ball State, Northern Illinois, or Eastern Michigan? And
Eastern Michigan, Toledo, Ball
yeah,
State, Northern Illinois. Yep.
yeah, those two games. I watched those two games, and the thing that stood out the most to me from a coaching point of view was the mistakes of tackling. Like, it's just a broken play can go 60 yards, where in the SEC or the Big Ten, a broken play will only get about 20 yards.
Yeah, and again, Ron, I think it goes back to the era we're living in. Big 12 games have been typically high scoring, or not as much this year. SEC games typically low scoring, not as much this year. But you can't help it. Again, Ron, I hate to be redundant, but the lack of spring practice and limited contact during the summer camp, it has a lot to do with this fundamental tackling, the fundamentals of tackling, because you're right. I mean, I watched that game last night, especially Eastern Michigan. They couldn't tackle any running back from Toledo.
No,
These guys nobody went down on first contact, is what I'm trying to say.
exactly. That's what I was trying to say too.
Yeah.
Just those type of tackles and the mistakes that we saw on a Wednesday night, you don't see that on with the big, the bigger conference teams. Like I said, like the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10 type teams. Yeah, it's just, but hey, I'm not going to criticize, but it is what it is. It's lack of, like you said, lack of prep time and no training camps, and we're living in a COVID era, right?
Yep.
It is what it is. All right, Ross, let's talk about the game between the Iowa Hawkeyes taking on the Penn State Nittany Lions. The 0-4 Penn State Nittany Lions taking on the 3-2 Iowa Hawkeyes. In fact, I got a
2-2, Ron.
2-2.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why it says. We got a double right here, so we got a double entry into the system. Good catch on you, Ross. Looking at the line here, we got -2 for Iowa. The over/under set at 47. ATS forecast going to lean with the Iowa Hawkeyes here, 27.5 to 18.5. The over/under to land on 46. Looking at the Iowa Hawkeyes, Ross, the last 5 years as a road favorite, 17-1 straight up, 13-5 against the number. I thought that was pretty.
That's strong.
Yeah, it is strong for
especially under the same coaching staff. Hayden Fry's been there for quite a while.
And looking at Penn State now, if we can probably do a whole podcast on Penn State to figure out what's going on there. But I've boiled it down to a couple of things. Number one, their defense is just not. It's not where we're used to seeing a Penn State defense. And on offense, a lack of a running game. They look at last year. They had Journey Brown, 129 rushes, 890 yards. This year, the leading rusher for Penn State, Devin Ford, 53 carries, 207 yards. But the thing that worries me the most, the second leading rusher in that team is the quarterback. And that always concerns me. Clifford, 58 attempts, 169 yards. And when your quarterback is your second leading rusher on the team, and he's only like, 30, 40 yards away from your leading rusher, which is a running back, that to me just tells me what's going on at Penn State.
Yeah, even the leading running back, when you divide that number of total yards he's rushed for by 4, you're looking a little over 50 yards per game from your leading rusher. You need more than that to be effective and be balanced offensively. Another key factor too, Ron, is Penn State is at a -6 turnover differential through 4 games. That'll cost you. It cost them against their opening game, in which they lost to Indiana. That was a big difference in that game, was the Penn State errors between penalties, missed field goals, and turnovers. And it cost them last week as well. And on the other hand, Iowa is a +4 turnover differential. So I think a key focus for Penn State, if they want to win this game, is trying to win the turnover battle to start with, and that'll give them at least a realistic opportunity to win this game, because they can't pull off wins when they keep turning the ball over at the rate they are right now, Ron. And another key note, Penn State has won 6 straight in this series, Ron. So Iowa, big time revenge here. Iowa started out 0-2, but the last 2 games, Ron, they've been awfully impressive. 49-7. And what was the other game? 49-7. They defeated Michigan State, and they beat at Minnesota last week, 35-7. So they've been strong defensively. Through 4 games, Iowa's given up a little over 14 points and 300 yards per game.
Yeah, and look at this. Like, now we know how good Northwestern is, and it was 21-20 for Northwestern. Purdue is a little bit of a head scratcher.
Purdue's not bad though. Remember, Purdue is 2-1, and they lost a close game last week. So, and Purdue pulled that game out Purdue pulled that game out against Iowa in the last minute, if I recall.
Yeah, no, I think Purdue has a good defense. To me, the jury's still out on that offense.
I agree.
And you can't judge by one game. And last weekend and Northwestern's got a good defense. So, and we'll talk about that in a second. As a coach, Ross, I can tell you the hardest part, the head coach for Penn State, his job is to try to keep the atmosphere positive. He's got a tough job to do right now, because once you're losing, it's not fun to be around. It's just everything. Like, everything sucks. Your breakfast sucks, your lunch sucks. It's just practice sucks. It's just it's like this cloud.
Being 0-4 at Penn State's a hell of a lot different than being 0-4 at Eastern Michigan, Ron, because a lot more following at Penn State, a lot more media coverage, a big brand name in college football. So a lot more pressure on those kids and the coaching staff than maybe at a smaller conference type of team.
Yeah, and James Franklin, he was at Vanderbilt as he was head coach, right? And he's been
through success there, So
yeah, but the program itself, he knew when he went to Vanderbilt what he was getting himself into, and Franklin's a sharp guy. He'll know how to motivate his troops on the weekend. But this is going to be a tough task, and when you got an 0-4 in the standings, and you're used to having wins and the games like this. This is a game where Penn State is normally a favorite at home against Iowa.
Yeah, if this was the opening game of the year, Ron, I would say they'd probably be around a 10-point favorite, because they were ranked early in the year and Iowa wasn't. And in terms of Franklin being at Vanderbilt and now Penn State and being used to these types of tough situations at Vanderbilt, the difference is the expectation level at Vanderbilt is a little bit different than at Penn State,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of pressure on him right now.
Oh yeah. And the last 10 overall games, they've had a bit of success, 7-3 straight up, 6-4 against the number. So we'll see what type of game we're going to have this weekend. The total in this game, Ross, is what? It's 47. We had a 46. I'm wondering if the play callers for Penn State are going to be very conservative, because the one thing they don't want to do in the first quarter is turn the ball over, like you said in your description about this game, because you start turning the ball over, it's like, oh, here we go again type thing, right?
Yeah.
Then you start hearing the coaches' whispers in the back.
To play the devil's advocate, how conservative can you be when you haven't shown the ability to run the ball effectively, and now you're playing against a very good defense. So it's not an easy situation, Ron, is what I'm trying to say. As a coach, that's what you want to do. Okay, let's come out and establish the run, and let's keep it tight to the vest. Let's win the turnover battle. But when you can't run the ball, it forces you into playing behind the sticks, obvious pass situations. And quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, I don't like this quarterback at Penn State. I don't think he's one of the better quarterbacks they've had. No disrespect to him, but he's not a game changer, Ron. He's more of a game manager, and you're forcing him into situations where he needs to take the team on his back, and he's not capable of doing so, especially when they get behind.
It's funny you say that because there's a kid here in our backyard in Ottawa. He's going to Penn State, and people are going to hear about this kid. His name is Christian Veyer, and I've coached this kid. I trained him, and not not trying to say because I trained him or anything like that.
No, it's a feather in your cap.
Yeah, and this young man has went on to prep schools in the States, and he comes out of Ottawa, and he's going to Penn State, and it's going to be interesting to see how because the one thing about being Canadian, we always in the CFL is quarterbacks always get a little bit of a knock, that stigma that it's a Canadian quarterback type thing. It's been like that forever, and I'm hoping. Christian goes there obviously to Penn State, and he knocks it out of the park. It's one thing. Obviously, I'll be cheering for him and wishing him all the best. But I'm looking forward to see because I think he's rated like a 4-star in those prep
Wasn't
magazines.
Danny Cannell a Canadian quarterback, the one that went to Florida, or was it Werfel?
No, that was Palmer, Jesse Palmer.
Oh, Jesse Palmer. Okay. So he fared okay.
Yeah, he did all right.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And then if you look at Canadian quarterbacks, when you're talking about the CFL, Warren Moon and Doug Flutie, who started their careers in the CFL, turned out to be pretty good NFL quarterbacks. So.
Yeah, but you know what? Not to get off
but those are American citizens. I get that.
But speaking of the CFL, like you mentioned Edmonton and Toronto Argonauts, you would think in the CFL there'd be more Canadian quarterbacks, but every starting quarterback for every CFL team is an American quarterback.
So what kind when they roster limitations, Ron, in the CFL? Do they limit how many foreign players?
Yeah, there's a ratio.
Americans?
Yeah, there is a ratio. I'd like to say it's like something like 60-40 or 50, close to 50-50, or it's more Americans. You're a lot more Americans, but it's not as high as you would think. And mostly if you look at the Canadians, if you look at the birth certificates on most teams, all the Canadians, they're all either on the defensive line or the offensive line.
Right.
A lot of but it's one thing that the GMs have to play with the ratio, right?
Yeah.
But back to Penn State. Yeah, watch out for this kid, Christian Veyer. He's going to be somebody we're going to talk about in the next few years. That he's going to do pretty well.
Keep an eye on that, Ron. I'm marking it down as we speak.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Trust me. You'll be. Yeah. All right. Cincinnati taking on the UCF Golden Knights. Now, Central Florida going into this one, Ross, as a home underdog. In the last 10 years, they've only been a home dog 6 times in 10 years.
I believe it.
Yeah, I thought that was phenomenal when I looked at that. But they're playing against one of the hottest teams right now in Division I football. A team that's flying. I wouldn't say they're flying under the radar, but they're just probably a team right now that if you got a winning streak going, you probably don't want to play this team right now because they got nothing. Hey, Luke Fickell is doing a phenomenal job right now in Cincinnati. And going into this game, Ross, the Bearcats, let me see here. I wrote down some information. As an away favorite the last 2 years, 6-0 straight up. And now they're going into this game as a 5.5-point road favorite. The over-under is 63.5. We got the Bearcats winning a really tight one here, 31-29, over-under at 61.08. I know you've been all over Cincinnati all year. Man, I can't wait to hear what you got to say about this game.
Yeah, I was on him last week laying a big number last Friday night. I had it as a free pick video at ATSStats.com, and a lot of people gave me some flack for that because they had UCF coming up next, and they were playing East Carolina, and it looked like a flat spot on paper. Well, here's the thing. Cincinnati was coming off 3 straight wins by 28 points or more against some pretty good AAC teams, namely SMU, a couple good AAC teams. Houston was another one of them. In any event, they went from being rated number 6 in the country to number 7 in the country, dropping down and having Florida leapfrogging them, who was 4-1 at the time. And I said they play with a chip on their shoulder, and they did. They won 55-17. Now, this is a whole different animal, Ron. Playing at Central Florida, this to me is a danger spot for Cincinnati because, this Central Florida team could score on anybody. In
Yep.
Cincinnati right now, their calling card is their defense. Their offense isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but their defense has given up just 12 points per game, and that's one of the tops in the nation. And UCF, one of the more dynamic offenses in college football. I mean, I think they're averaging, what do we got here? UCF averaging 44 points in 619.1 yards of total offense per game.
Wow.
That's dynamic. So the big key in this matchup will be Central Florida's offense against Cincinnati's defense. I think Cincinnati will be able to move the ball effectively against a UCF defense that's improving over the last couple games, but is still a little bit vulnerable. So I'm really interested. I mean, if at this particular moment in time, I would actually have a small lean on the home underdog of 6 points in this contest. I think it's 6. Yes, 6 points here. So danger spot for Cincinnati. If they come up with an impressive win here, boy, oh boy, you got to start giving them strong consideration for the 14 playoff at the end of the year.
Well, and you know what? I'm going to politely disagree there.
That's okay.
And the thing is, you're playing in a conference where, if I look at the standings, you're playing in the American Athletic Conference, and in your conference, let's take a look at the teams you're playing: Austin Peay, Army, South Florida, SMU, Memphis, Houston, where Florida's playing, the big dogs in the SEC. And the thing is,
it's Central Florida, buddy. They're playing Central Florida. Yeah, they're not playing Florida.
Yeah. So the thing is, in these discussions we've been having for 10 years, right? BYU is going to be another one people are going to be talking about if they get snubbed. But
you're talking about Florida leapfrogging them. I'm sorry, Ron.
Yeah.
I misunderstood.
Okay. Yeah. No. And it's just, to me, like Cincinnati, having a great season. But I think they should just focus on the games. And I remember hearing about that too. Then the getting they didn't like the ranking. But if you're in the SEC or the Big 12 or the Big 10 or one of the bigger conference, then there's an argument to be made there. Yeah. But let's take a look at it. Like, who's the signature win here? SMU, the big one?
First of all, go back. Army was number 25 in the country until they lost last week. SMU was number 19 in the country until they lost last week. Memphis was in the top 25 at the beginning of the year. And Houston's not a great team, but they're not a pushover. So yeah, I mean, you can't compare that to an SEC type schedule. I get that, but they're also dominating those teams when they're playing them. I mean, Memphis 49-10, SMU 42-13 on the road. They held Army to 10 points, and 7 of those points came out of the first play of the game. They picked up a fumble and went all the way for a touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate point you're making, Ron, but it's not like they've played cream puffs either, Yeah. So anytime a team's undefeated and they're winning decisively against, you're looking at 3 teams at one time or another that they played out of their 7 wins that were ranked in the top 25 at one time this year. So not as soft as you would like to say, but certainly the AAC from top to bottom is not the SEC. You're right, Ron.
Alan Miles, one of our guys in the chat, and thank you, Alan, for writing this. He goes, as you said before, UCF doesn't have the defense to keep up with the good Cincinnati offense and defense. He has Cincinnati winning 41-24. Man, it's
again, UCF's defense is a concern. Could you scroll back up to their final scores, please?
Yep.
Thank you. To me, they played better defense over the last 2 games. Houston's a pretty good offense. They held them to 21, and Temple, they held them to 13. But prior to that, look at 50-49 loss to Memphis, 34 against Tulsa. They allowed 28 against East Carolina and 21 against Georgia Tech. I mean, they're if you look at their total yards they're giving up, and what's concerning is when they step up in class. I mean, the Memphis game, for example, that's a dynamic Memphis offense to put up 50 on them. Tulsa is not exactly a dynamic offense. They're calling cards for defense. They scored 34 on them. East Carolina put 28 up on them. So yeah, the UCF defense, I agree with the listener. a viewer, thank you for chiming in, by the way, that's their concern. You know what I mean? It's going to be their concern going forward. It's been an ongoing issue at Central Florida. Dynamic offense, so-so defense. One thing I will say, though, Ron, this is a defense that's very opportunistic from Central Florida. They've forced 19 turnovers so far this year in their first 7 games.
Oh, wow.
So that will, that kind of ratio, the ability to turn people over, covers up a lot of defensive deficiencies.
And keep in mind, remember I've told you, this Tulsa team, whoever the head coach is at Tulsa, or the offense coordinator, defense coordinator, to me, that they make the best adjustments at halftime. Again, this weekend, they came from behind. They were losing this game at halftime. They came from behind. They
were losing that game 23-6 against Central Florida.
So it's going to be a good game. It'll be give us something to really talk about on the weekend. All right, let's go to Indiana taking on Ohio State. Now the Buckeyes going, still undefeated 3-0. I think last week 49-27. I don't know if that was the last week or the week before. They had a COVID situation, right? Like for Maryland.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So they were coming off a bye, and then you got Indiana, who's hey, you know what? They're winning games right now that they should be winning. Penn State, Rutgers, Michigan State, all teams with a losing record, and now they're going to face the big dog of the Big Ten, the Ohio State Buckeyes in Columbus, Ohio. Man, I know. I don't think from just hearing you talk the last couple of days, I don't think you're a big believer in Indiana. But with maybe an upset win or a close win this weekend, maybe you might start believing in them. What do you think, Ross?
They stuck it in my ear a couple times this year. I know that, namely last week at Michigan State. No, give them credit where credit's due. They're 4-0, and 4-0. Not only 4-0, 4-0 straight up and against the spread. So they've been a money team so far, Ron. They beat Michigan a couple weeks back, and that broke a 25-game losing streak against the Wolverines. Similar situation here, Ron. Ohio State has defeated Indiana 26 straight times. Indiana has not beat Ohio State since 1988. So similar type situation here. The difference being Ohio State, this version of Ohio State's much better than this year's version of Michigan. So a little more difficult of a task here. And a couple things, though. I mean, even though they've had no success against Ohio State, they have been able to cover 7 of the last 9 matchups. So, and you're getting 20 points in this game. And in addition to Indiana is 9-1 against the spread since 2018, following a conference win. The only drawback I will say is who Indiana's beaten so far. The 4 teams they've beaten have a combined record of 3-13 right now, straight up. So, but you can go the other way too. Ohio State's played 3 games, and their 3 opponents are only 2-9. But so we'll see. I mean, this is certainly going to be a huge measuring stick. The only thing you stop and look at this, Ron, you're looking at right now a number 3 team in the country hosting a number 9 team. Okay. Shouldn't be that much of a disparity, yet Ohio State right now is a 20-point favorite.
Yeah,
okay.
True, good point.
Which means if this game was on the road at Indiana, they'd be still about a 14-point favorite. So obviously the bookmakers, I always trust well above the pollsters.
I'm trying to see here on 13 days rest. Ohio State since 96, 9-4 against the number. It's Ohio State. Nothing's going to bother them. And when you look at their record, 23-2 straight up the last 3 years at home. They're only lost to Oklahoma and Wisconsin. And as you mentioned, Indiana has a pretty good dog record against Ohio State. What was it you said the last?
They have 7 of the last 9 they've covered. And they were dogs in each one of those contests, Ron.
Okay. And Indiana, the last 2 years, Ross, as an away dog, 5-0 against the numbers. So things, hey, you're not going to be Alabama. You're not going to be Florida. You're not going to be Ohio State in 2-3 years. It takes time to build something going. And they're off to a really good start to a year. And the new, I think it's the new head coach in Indiana for the last couple of years.
Been there for a couple of years now, but he's definitely escalated the program year by year. So.
And you know what? He's bringing energy to that program. He's bringing recruits. And to me right now, just ask, I heard something this morning. Ask Tom Herman how important it is to recruit, especially kids from your own state. Like,
oh yeah,
Herman's having a really tough time. I heard this morning that out of the top 30 Texas high school recruits, only one has signed with Texas.
And that's a real. That's not going to go over well with the fans, number one, and number two in the athletic department, because when you get up the echelon of those people who hire head coaches at universities. I mean, Texas, California, and Florida, the top three. I mean, in California, the top four states when it comes to recruiting. And if you can't keep players home, especially Texas is the biggest brand name of the Texas universities. That will not keep you around too long. The combination of you not living up to expectations in accordance with the brand name, and then losing recruiting battles within your own state. Good point, Ron.
Ohio State, like you said, Ross, 21-point favorite, over-under 66.5. The forecast going to go with the Buckeyes, 45-16, the over-under at 61.5. All right, let's talk about the little engine that can, right? The Liberty Flames here.
Flames.
Yeah, and taking on the NC State Wolfpack this weekend. Now, North Carolina State, a -4-point favorite. The over-under set at 67.5. ATS forecast sees a low-scoring game and a tight one here, 22.1 to 20.4. Now, looking at Liberty State, the last, let me see here. I don't know if they've ever, they only had one game on record against NC State, and it was a win for North Carolina State. It was in 2011, 43-21. And looking at their season, Liberty's having a great year, right? Look at the teams they played here. Virginia Tech, Southern Miss, Syracuse, UL Monroe, North Alabama, Florida International, Western Kentucky. And then you got NC State coming off a couple of big wins, Florida State. They lost to North Carolina. I'm trying to see where their big win. I thought they had a big signature win here. Pittsburgh is a big win. Virginia, they lost to Virginia Tech, Wake Forest. So NC State having a pretty good year. But you know what? What's the line in this game for? I don't know. Do you think that line's a bit low?
No, I don't, because I'm sure first of all, Liberty is, I believe, number 23 in the country right now. Number one from a perception standpoint. Number two, they already proved they can go on the road against an ACC opponent and win, as they went to Virginia Tech as a 17-point dog and won the game outright. So in North Carolina State, their weakness is their defense. They give up a lot of points and a lot of yards, Ron. And this is a Liberty offense that's racked up close to 500 yards per game. And they did so against Virginia Tech as well. They moved the ball up and down the field against Virginia Tech. So they're more than capable. This is an intriguing matchup. Shame on NC State if they take this game lightly, because all they had to do is look at what Liberty did when they walked into Virginia Tech. So Liberty's not going to sneak up on anybody at this point. So we'll see. If they win this game, they're very well deserving of a top 25 ranking.
Yeah, and you know what? Look at this. They're coming off a bye, so they've had 2 weeks to really study this game. But coming off a bye since '96, only 1-3 against the number. And for NC State, when they're facing an opponent that's coming off a bye, they're only 2-7-1. The only thing that concerns me here, Ross, is NC State, the last 3 years as a home favorite, they are 16-2 straight up. So, they have the ability to, obviously to win this game.
See, that's where I would take a look at the straight up number, and it carries a lot of weight for me as a home favorite when they're straight up and they're 16-2, because you're only laying 4. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's why I'm a little bit concerned. But you know what? Maybe I'll send to you there offline.
I don't think this is going to be a low scoring game like the computer has projected. But then who am I to go against the computer? It's been red hot this year. So.
Yeah. All right, Ross. This, you know what? This is going to be like the flying under the radar game of the week, I think.
No doubt.
I got a feeling that I'll be tuning into this one. Wisconsin taking on Northwestern. Now the Wildcats 4-0 on the season, taking on the Badgers, who've really, bad luck this year, but just with the COVID situations. And you know what? I can feel for the coaching staff and the players. You get hype. You're facing. You're probably thinking you're going to a game this week, and then the rug gets pulled and there's no game. And man, it's just the emotions that, not just them, everybody's facing, not even football, just worldwide, right? Let's be honest here. But looking at Wisconsin, Ross, they're going into this game as a road favorite of 7.5 points, the over-under at 44.5. And look at this, the computer going with the Wildcats, 24.5-7, and the over-under at 31.5. Wisconsin, 9-3 straight up as a road favorite the last 3 years, 8-4 against the number, where Northwestern 2-10 straight up as a home dog the last 4 years, 3-7-2. So that's a little bit concerning as a home dog record the last 4 years. Taking a look at this matchup.
Hey, Ron, if I could add in,
go ahead.
Just last year alone, Northwestern, I believe, was 0-5 straight up in ATS as a home dog. Now this is a whole different Northwestern team, but to your point.
Yeah, and you know what? We're big fans of Fitzgerald, the coach at Northwestern. He's got a tough task, and you've mentioned many times recruiting is really tough to get the top academic players to play for Northwestern. Academically, it's not a hard sell. Northwestern's a great university.
Yeah.
It's just how do you and having been a university coach, Rosh, I can tell you by talking to players. It's such a hard thing to juggle for young players, especially because they're coming into university. There's that atmosphere of they're away from home, but then the academics and the coaching staff will always be on these guys. You don't get your grades up, you don't practice, you don't play, and that's one thing that they're really strict on. But going into this game, I see this as Wisconsin's, the offensive line against Northwestern's defensive line. I got to, obviously give the edge to Wisconsin, but if I'm the head coach for the Wisconsin or the offense coordinator, I'm going into this game and I'm saying I'm going to run the ball about 70% of the time. I don't, Northwestern, great defense, but how much pounding can they take from a big offensive line like Wisconsin?
Well, the key is going to be if they could play with the lead for most of the game, Northwestern, or some, at least in the first half, where again, I agree with you, Ron. I mean, you said 70% of the time the run to pass ratio, I would think it's somewhere around 60 just in their first two games alone. I mean, that's their strength. It has been their strength for years. And those offense, they just keep producing these offensive linemen, Ron, that are NFL caliber guys. You know what I mean? You look at, I think they've had 9 guys go to the NFL off their offensive line the last couple of years. So your points are well taken, but you give Pat Fitzgerald 7.5 points with this caliber of team. They're going to be a dangerous opponent. I'd be shocked if this game doesn't come down to the wire, Ron.
One thing I'm going to look for in the first series is the size. That's one thing I always do when I look at a game, and especially when you get a program like Wisconsin against a program like Northwestern. I'm going to look at the offensive linemen and defensive linemen, the size of the players. Northwestern's got some good linebackers. They rally through the ball really quickly. They hit the holes, but it's the size of the linemen.
Right. And as well as I do, the linebackers are only as effective as the defensive linemen being able to hold up their blocks. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If you allow these offensive linemen to get to the second level, it's a moot point. And Wisconsin's very good at that. So it's an excellent point, Ron.
If there's one thing that's good for Wisconsin or Northwestern this weekend, at home against Wisconsin since '96, 7-1 against the number. So hey, we'll see. Like you said, I don't know. 7 will it's an interesting number.
And I got to believe the general public's going to be on Wisconsin here. The difference too. You mentioned the COVID issues. Wisconsin's only played 2 games thus far, but boy, have they been impressive in those 2 games. 45-7 at home against Illinois. And then last week they went to Ann Arbor and crushed the Wolverines 49-11. So Yeah, and Northwestern's played 4 games thus far. They're not really blowing anybody out. Again, Ron, I think this is going to be a tooth and nail type of game. And if you're a guy that likes flashy offensive football, this is not the game to tune into.
Yeah, it might be quick with all that running going on this weekend,
exactly.
right?
Yep.
All right, Ross, Bedlam. Here we go. Oklahoma State taking on the Sooners, and the bookmakers have made the Sooners a 7-point home favorite. The over/under set at 59. Now, looking at the forecast, we have Oklahoma winning here 32.6 to 23.6. Over/under set at 56. And some numbers here on the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, 21-2 straight up as a home favorite. Or in this series versus, oh, wait a minute. I'm reading the wrong one here. I'll get back to that in a second. I was just, when you write your notes all over the place, I feel like a doctor sometimes, it's like,
pretty
okay,
bad when you can't even write you read your own writing like me,
Yeah. So. Okay. So here we go. Oklahoma State, the last 20 years, they've been an underdog 16 times. And in those 20 games, they're 3-13 straight up as a dog in this series. And that's what got me a little bit is that, Oklahoma, man, and this kid, the quarterback, Rattler, man, he's, at first, the first couple of games, I was like, okay, I don't see anything. And then this last couple of games, like Oklahoma now, Lincoln Riley's got these guys playing some good football. And a bit like Texas, they're peaking at the right time.
Yes, I agree. Oklahoma State, better than average for sure defense for a Big 12 team this year. And they got some weapons. I mean, Chuba Hubbard, I love this kid. He's probably played a little below expectations thus far this year, but I don't think it's all on him. And they were without their starting quarterback for a few games. His name escapes me. I think his first name is Spencer, but he's a pretty decent quarterback. To me, this looks like a game that could be a lot closer than Oklahoma fans would care to see. But again, an intriguing matchup, Ron, between two really good teams.
Well, to me, it's in a football season, it's about momentum. And clearly, since that loss to Texas, Oklahoma State hasn't really, okay, they've only had one game. But to look at the COVID situation here too, like they've only had one game since that it was November 19th, and they've only had one game against Kansas State, and it was a 2018 win for Oklahoma State. But if you look at some of the games prior, Iowa State 24-21, a 3-point match
win right there.
Yeah, that's a big win, and it's Iowa State's a good program. Kansas not having a good year. They beat West Virginia. West Virginia defensively, one of the really top good defense. Yes. Yeah. Yep. And Tulsa, So
everybody was criticizing them after that Tulsa game, Ron. But we now know Tulsa's gone 4-0 since that loss. So that tells you something.
Yeah, and we all know anybody who's a football guy or a girl, the offense is always ahead of the defense. The defense always ahead of the offense at the beginning of the season, and it takes, and especially in this year like this year when you don't have any off-season training. And you probably go in there with half your playbook cut in half. But look at Oklahoma. Missouri State, big win. Kansas State, a 3-point win. Iowa State.
Game. Sorry, they lost. They lost against Kansas State.
Yeah, Kansas State, 38-35. 37-30 against Iowa State. Texas, that was a shootout. TCU, they won. They blew out Texas Tech, and they blew out Kansas. So they had two, breathers, as Hal Mummy would say. Two easy, cupcake games right here. But now you're going back up in class and facing Oklahoma State Sooners. So I agree with you, Ross. I think keep in mind here, and TCU's not having a great year. Let's be honest. And Texas, it's not Texas standards. So I think the strength of schedule. What's the strength? Yeah, see this 33% in the last 3 games is really. Gonna get people's they got my attention. Yeah. And getting 7 points as the
7.5. Yeah.
And I always say, when you get a game like this, who's the best player on the field?
Chuba Hubbard.
There you go. And I think the only thing again that concerns me, 3-13 straight up, but 7-9 against the spread in the Bedlam series. I think Oklahoma State, Ross, getting +7 this weekend against an Oklahoma Sooner team who's really benefited the last couple of weeks from soft games. I think the people are going to be all Oklahoma because, the big names, Lincoln Riley,
Brand name, right, Ron?
Yeah.
And they've dominated the series for the most part over the last couple decades. But you look at some common opponents, Ron, if you want to scroll down to their ledger there, or the games they played. Oklahoma State's only loss came against Texas. That game went overtime. Ironically, Oklahoma, probably you could mark the Texas game as their turnaround. They won that game 53-45, also went overtime. So, and then you're looking at Oklahoma losing at home to Kansas State, and Oklahoma State winning by a couple or actually winning at Kansas State 20-18 last week. So if you look at the common opponents, you're seeing, I know that Oklahoma has played a softer schedule of late, but the common opponents indicate to me this is going to be a nail biter. It's going to go down to the wire,
I agree.
So,
I agree 100%. This is going to be like that Texas game. And hey, let's be honest, bragging rights, state bragging rights are on the line here. And these guys want, to win that. All right, Ross, we do have one question. I know you got to go very shortly. One of our guys, Paul D, asked, can you guys talk about Tulane at Tulsa tonight? Tulane at Tulsa. Let me bring that up.
Two teams that their strength is running the ball. We already talked about Tulsa. They have been better offensively of late. Their defense was really good to start the year. It's faltered a little bit of late. And two similar type teams. What's the strength of schedule on these teams over the last three, Ron? Yes,
very low, 22 in the last three.
Yeah. So they really haven't played anybody of late. And if we look at their past matchups last year, Tulsa, where's the past match? The last 7 head-to-head. Tulane won last year, 38-26. Actually, Tulane has won the last 3 in this series. So, this is a good matchup. It'll be an interesting game, and I'm not sure I'm going to use the game, but you'll see a lot of both teams feature their running games, which should be effective against each other. So, could be a very close game when push comes to shove. I think maybe I might have a small lean toward Tulsa without looking any further, just on the fact that they're playing with revenge from the last 3 years.
Yeah, and the fact that Tulane played Army last week, I got to look at that injury report. Anytime you play these option type teams, the trench guys get banged up, linebackers too. So take a look at Tulane's, the injury report to see if any of their starting O-line or D-line are banged up. Because when you face these teams that run all the time, it really wears on you, especially in game number 8, 9. So
especially against a team like Army that runs. I'm not privy to I could look it up, but my point being is when you play an Army or Navy, most times than not, your defense is on the field a long time.
Yeah,
they're very good at controlling time of possession because of how efficient they run their triple option attack. So, what kind of effect does that have the week after? Matter of fact, I'm going to look that up one of these days, Ron. If you remind me, that's a good point. How teams do after facing Air Force, Navy, and Army the following week.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, you know what? That is a good point. Tulane, Ross.
You made it, not me.
I know. I know, but see, I'm thinking from a football point of view, but from a sports betting point of view,
right?
From the analytics, I want to see if the analytics support the theory type thing, right? Tulane 6-1 against the spread since '96 at home. Sorry, Tulsa 6-1 against the spread versus Tulane since '96 at home. I'm leaning to, with the computer here, 35-28. It has them winning by 7. And I think that, but Paul D says I'm all in Tulane first half. All right, Paul. Hey, you know what? Good luck,
Paul.
Yeah, good luck, buddy. Like I said, we talked about that game, and hopefully things go well for you. And we wish you the best. All right, Ross Benjamin, what do you got going this weekend, buddy?
Well, I'll have a game tonight. I'll have a pick in the NFL tonight, and boy, oh boy, Ron, my NFL since the first Monday night of the year, 32-21. That's 60%, folks. If anybody knows anything about picking games against the point spread, 60% is pretty darn good. And I look to improve upon that number as the season moves forward. So you can count on a game this evening being posted later this afternoon. I'll also have anywhere from 3 to 5 games on Saturday or Sunday, in the NFL. I'll also have a Monday night pick in that big game on Monday night, a real good matchup between Tampa and LA, the LA Rams status. And then Saturday, 3 to 5 selections in college football. Didn't get off to a good week or a start last night in college football, but my history says I'm going to rebound, be resilient. So ATSstats.com, daily, weekly, monthly, annual packages, whatever you want. It's all right there. And you could also go to my website, which is rbwins.com. Back to you, Ron.
Yeah, and like Ross said, we're working on new personal handicappers page, so you'll be able to see Ross's personal page, and you'll have videos talking about his selections. You have his picks, his subscriptions. We're upgrading our software here, Ross, and really enjoy doing these.
Stepping up our game, baby.
Absolutely. You know what? We got a good show number 73 today, Ross.
Yeah,
73.
Wow,
we started this
great.
in June, July.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Chip Chirimbus has joined us. Veteran
so
Las Vegas handicapper, former winner of the Las Vegas Hilton Super Contest. So a real credible guy. You're going to enjoy him and Ron doing a podcast quite soon. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, we're like you said, we've upped our game here at ATS Stats, and we're hitting singles, right, Ross? We're not looking for home runs right out of the gate. We're looking to hit singles. We just keep hitting those singles.
Move the line, as they say in baseball, move the line along, Ron. Move the line along.
Yeah. And I got 2 college football plays right now. And truth be told, I'm not, college football, you can have your highs and lows. And right now I'm in a medium gut right now in my college football selections, hitting around 50% the last 3 weeks. But NFL, Ross, 7-3 the last 2 weeks of my NFL selections. 17-8 my last 25 overall, 68%. So
that's pretty darn good, buddy.
Yeah, but you know what? Those losses wear on me, though.
Listen, let's concentrate on the positive. Your last 25 pay selections, 17-8. That's pretty darn good. You can make an awful lot of money with that kind of run.
Yeah, and folks, you can get those plays at atsstats.com, and hopefully we can carry that on this weekend with more winning selections right here at atsstats.com. All right, folks, I want to thank everybody in the chat for chiming in today and giving us your input. Tomorrow is NFL Football Friday. We're going to talk about the Eagles, Browns, Packers, Colts, Titans, Ravens, the Chiefs and the Raiders, and that Monday night between the LA Rams and the Bucks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And should be a good day tomorrow for Football Friday. For Ross Benjamin, I'm Ron Raymond. This was the Raymond Report, sports betting podcast without Rusty the dog for Thursday, November 19th. As always, shop for value, play those percentages. We'll see you back shortly with another Raymond Report.